5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
July 15th, 1975. The launch of the Soviet two-man test project spacecraft, the Soyuz 19. It took off from Earth and hurtled into space to complete the first international spaceflight. Under the support of the Apollo-Soyuz test project, one of its missions was to dock with the American spacecraft Apollo, which launched at 2250 from Cape Canaveral from Saturn 1B. Joint preparations for the Soyuz Apollo test project were held in Moscow and Houston. And these gave the crews of both crafts the chance to get to know each other better, visit each other, meet the families and spend some days off together. But there is one detail the participants remember well.
В 1974 году, во время последней нашей совместной тренировки по программе «Союз Аполлон», Дик Слейтон, Венс Брандт, Том Стаффорд, Юджин Сернан, Митчелл, они попросили, находясь на космодроме, залететь в Узбекистан. Что бы вы хотели? Мы бы хотели быть в Самарканде. Мы бы хотели видеть последствия жизни Улугh Бега. Я бы назвал Улугh Бега, что это явление на Земле. У нас немного. Явление Циолковское – это явление, Королёв – это явление. Я бы сейчас приписал и Юрия Гагарина, зная его все от рождения и до гибели, это тоже явление. А Улугh Бег – это явление Средневековья. Богом данное.
Mardin Fortress, Southwest Asia, 1394. Amir Timur, or Tamerlan as he is better known in the West, was in deep sorrow. His heart had not yet healed from the loss of his son, Umar Shah, and he glowered angrily at the fortress, wanting to raze it to the ground to avenge the death of his son. As they are waiting for the order to destroy the city, the silence of the twilight is suddenly rent by a mighty yell, the cry of a messenger galloping up from afar. Tamerlan turns to the messenger on horseback, who falls at his feet, holding out a message. It is a letter from the eldest wife of Timur, Sarai Mul Khanum. In honor of my grandson, I pardon this city and the people of Mardin. Let this boy be the city's savior. Long may they remember the name of my grandson, Mohammed Taragai ibn Timur Ulugh Beg. Right from the outset, Ulugh Beg's birth was marked by a great act of mercy. March 1972, the launch of rocket carrier Titan III. It successfully passed an asteroid belt, photographed Jupiter, and was the first spacecraft to reach distant Pluto's orbit. Pioneer 10 has long since left our solar system, and now, almost half a century later, is heading towards far-off stars, making it Earth's first interstellar spacecraft. It carries information, a message from Earthlings to other civilizations. The message is in the form of gold-plated discs and tells about Earth and its location, about humanity and our achievements. They are images of men and women, images and sound recordings of readings in various languages, as well as music from various cultures and times. What lies behind all these messages from humanity to other worlds? How did we develop our understanding of science? Who are they, those few among us who have explored the secrets of the universe? Those who passed on to us their knowledge and research, who gave their all for the sake of generations to come? Thanks to them, we can now study the world around us, be it the far-off cosmos or the inner dimensions of the human being. In the 15th century, one of the greatest human astronomers shared his knowledge and the secrets of the universe with the whole world. That man was Mirza Ulugh Beg, a Timurid emperor who ruled over vast areas of Central Asia. This great man made it his mission to bring knowledge to people's hearts and minds, knowledge that would continue to serve humanity in the distant future. Almost 150 years before Galileo Galilei's invention of the first telescope, Ulugh Beg built the world's largest astronomical instruments of the pre-telescope era in the capital of his empire, Samarkand. Ulugh Beg was the first person since Hipparchus to draw up a star catalogue based solely on what was visible to the naked eye. This catalogue, written as early as 1444 and containing data on 1,018 stars based solely on personal observations, is second only to the work of the ancient astronomer Hipparchus. All catalogues dating from the period between Hipparchus and Ulugh Beg, and this spans almost 16 centuries, were compiled almost entirely by introducing corrections to Hipparchus' observations. "200 years after Ulugh Beg's death, when his catalogue reached Europe, it caused quite a stir and was greeted with enthusiastic interest. In the 17th century, a star catalogue compiled by the great astronomer Johann Hevelius was published in Europe. The catalogue contains several engravings, and one in particular depicts a symbolic gathering of the world's greatest astronomers, brought together from various times and countries. They are Ptolemy, Tycho Brahe, Riccioli, William IV, Johann Hevelius, and Ulugh Beg. Religious fanatics held great sway in those days. The mood was very aggressive, and religion was very often mixed with politics. Mirza Ulugh Beg risked his place and the throne for his passion. And so today, thanks to this one man who was both a gifted scholar as well as a leader, we know a great deal about the position of the stars at that time. Although the Mongol invasion cast a shadow over this scientific progress, and deadly wars and plagues raged in Europe, a mighty empire rose up in Central Asia under the rulership of Amir Timur, with Samarkand as its capital. This empire was the mighty Timurid Empire of Mavaranaha, or Transoxiana as it's known in the West. Amir Timur's most important victory has gone down in history mainly because it was this great emperor who freed Europe from their fear of Sultan Bayezid. On the 28th of July 1402, Amir Timur inflicted a crushing defeat on Bayezid in what has become known as the Battle of Ankara. Sultan himself was taken prisoner. And as a result of this battle, Timur conquered the whole of Asia Minor, while the defeat of Bayezid led to the collapse of the Ottoman Empire itself. After this victory, Amir Timur returned to Samarkand. This is my sword. From this moment henceforth, I give it unto my beloved Ulugh Beg Bakodir. He will be the strength and upholder of my empire. It is my hope that he, as I, shall wield this sword. I have achieved all my goals in this perishable world. May he also achieve his. Ulugh Beg was born shortly after the death of Amir Timur's second son, Umar Shah. And Amir Timur took this as a sign of Allah's mercy, a grandson to console him from the loss of his son. And this was why Amir Timur was especially fond of Ulugh Beg and favored him above all his other grandchildren from his earliest childhood. Incidentally, it was Amir Timur himself who gave him the name Ulugh Beg, meaning Great Prince. Ulugh Beg received a first-rate education. He knew the theory of literary styles, and he was able to master Arabic and Persian as well as study Turkic verse. Amir Timur would often say, "The blue sky and the golden stars will always shine over Samarkand." Amir Timur loved to hold discussions with influential scholars. His patronage for the sciences and the arts ensured that new leaders would rise in these fields. The young prince would also join the discussions, and thanks to his excellent memory, astounds the whole world with his knowledge. 6 prince grandsons of Tamerlane are married to royalty. Like his brothers, young Prince Mirza Ulugh Beg is being married in Konigil. It was Ogo Begin, the daughter of his late uncle Mohammed Sultan, who became Ulugh Beg's wife that day. And her husband received the title Kurgan due to the fact that she was of the lineage of Khans. The most striking features of Samarkand are the huge monuments dating from the Timurid dynasty and later periods, such as Gur Emir, Bibi Hanum, and Registan Square. These magnificent buildings were restored according to sketches by Russian architects at the beginning of the 20th century and historic photographic materials. The cemeteries and places are impressive, lavish structures.
To construct complex patterns like the one seen here, one has to have an advanced knowledge of geometry and trigonometry. Ulugh Beg, in particular, was early developer of trigonometry, and he made one of the first complete tables, trigonometric tables, that describe the sines, cosines, and other trigonometric functions that underlie the geometry for constructing patterns like this.
The beauty of the buildings speaks for itself, of course, but studies on the edifices built by Amir Timur and his descendants show that they are just as unique as the architectural pearls of Egypt, Greece, and Rome, the pyramids, the Baalbek complex, and the Parthenon, for instance. And in terms of sophistication, well, they even surpassed them. Ulugh Beg's love of astronomy determined his most important architectural legacy, the world's largest observatory, which housed his main instrument, the sextant. And it was in the 15th century, under Ulugh Beg's reign, Muslim astronomy reached its zenith. For centuries, the whereabouts of Ulugh Beg's observatory eluded historians. It was only in 1908 that the Russian archaeologist Vasily Vyatkin, after painstakingly poring over countless land documents for many years and embarking on many often difficult challenges, was finally able to discover traces of the ruined observatory in a hill of deposits. It was a breakthrough discovery.
In Copenhagen, Denmark, at the David Collection Museum, one of the few artifacts that survived till today is an astrolabe that Ulugh Beg used during his research of the stars.
Some of our great treasures come from the 15th century, and one of the most popular or perhaps revered objects is the green carved jade cup of Ulugh Beg. Most likely it was made in a place such as Samarkand, but what makes it linked to Ulugh Beg in particular is an inscription that says his name, Ulugh Beg Kuragan. An interesting fact is that he also made sure to create the tomb for his grandfather, Timur, and that is something that can be seen today at the Gur Emir in Samarkand. Of all the jades, the most prized was nephrite, the same jade that was used for his cup, the same jade that was used for the tomb of his grandfather. And this particular block of jade was gathered from Champagne in 1425.
In 1425, Mirza Ulugh Beg returns from war in Mongolia. Situated between the Soybuyi fortress and Jizak in a pass known as Leonuti, Mirza Ulugh Beg chose a low hill on the outskirts of Samarkand as the site for his observatory. He oversaw the construction himself. It was constructed in such a way as to allow accurate astronomical observations.
So here's Earth with its axis of rotation tilted relative to the sun. That tilt is 23.5 degrees. Ulugh Beg determined that quite accurately. But Earth's axis actually rotates very slowly with a period of 26,000 years. This was a known phenomenon, but it had not been accurately measured. Ulugh Beg accurately measured it, and this was important because the coordinates of stars in the sky change as Earth's axis does this very slow 26,000 year rotation. So if you have not accurately measured it, then the coordinates of stars in star catalogs become progressively more and more wrong. And Ulugh Beg corrected that with his new star charts and with his better, more accurate measurement of the precession of Earth's axis of rotation. So it was really magnificent that Ulugh Beg did this 2 centuries before telescopes were invented and routinely used for astronomical observations. It's incredible.
Mon interrogation, est-ce que Ulugh Beg, l'équipe d'Ulugh Beg, n'était pas sur une piste qui était la piste d'abord de la rotation de la Terre sur elle-même, certainement, parce que l'un des deux tourne autour de l'autre à l'époque. Et disons, l'équipe était suffisamment brillante et intelligente pour s'être posé la question. Mais si elle s'avère fondée, on est presque un siècle avant Copernic, 150 ans avant Giordano Bruno, qui a été brûlé sur la Piazza dei Fiori à Rome en 1600 pour avoir soutenu l'idée que la Terre tournait autour du Soleil. Donc, l'idée révolutionnaire était celle-là. Est-ce que Ulugh Beg n'était pas à la recherche d'une preuve de la rotation autour du Soleil? Dans les tables d'Ulugh Beg qui ont été sauvées à Istanbul, malheureusement, il n'y aurait aucune allusion à cette recherche d'Ulugh Beg.
Ulugh Beg's famous star catalogue is known by various names: Zij Sultani, Zij Gurgani, Ulugh Beg's astronomical tables, the Sultan's new astronomical tables.
Ulugh Beg's collection of astronomical tables was actually the last large collection of such tables. Earlier Islamic astronomers also produced such collections of tables, but Ulugh Beg's seems to be the largest one, and it was so complete that it actually later astronomers simply used them. They adapted the tables sometimes to their own location, but in essence they always used Ulugh Beg's astronomical tables. And even in the 17th century, European astronomers also learned about these tables. And of course, European astronomy was already developing in a different direction, but still, several of the tables were still deemed to be so important that they had them translated into Latin. That was the scientific language of that period. So you see that Ulugh Beg's collection of astronomical tables not only influenced late Islamic astronomy, but even European astronomy in the 17th century.
Comment est-ce que les manuscrits d'Ulugh Beg sont arrivés en Angleterre? C'est une question extrêmement intéressante. Donc c'est ainsi que, au XVIIe siècle, John Greaves, qui est un orientaliste et astronome, donc le premier orientaliste astronome d'Angleterre, à Oxford, il voyage à Constantinople et il va trouver dans ses recherches deux manuscrits qui lui paraissent extrêmement importants. C'est la géographie d'Abul Feda et le manuscrit d'Ulugh Beg qu'il achète.
200 years passed before European scholars were able to appreciate the scientific and practical knowledge contained in the Zij Sultani. But just how did Ulugh Beg's work arrive in Europe? Many scholars have asked.
Et c'est grâce à Ali Kouchdi, les fameuses tables astronomiques, le Zij Gurgani, les tables du prince, qui ont été donc élaborées grâce aux observations de l'observatoire de Samarcande. Et heureusement que le disciple d'Ulugh Beg, donc Ali Kouchdi, a pu effectivement quitter Samarcande en emportant quelques exemplaires des tables astronomiques.
Ali Kouchdi came to Herat to visit his friend, the great poet Abdul Rahman Jami, Ali's Shirnawi's teacher, and asked for his help in getting a so-called road pass from Sultan Hussein Baykarat to leave the country and travel to Istanbul safely. He set out from Herat in 1472, bound for Istanbul with a caravan loaded with many books, but most importantly, with a manuscript of Ulugh Beg's Zij. The great scholar was received in Istanbul with all the respect befitting his high standing. Later, Ali Kouchdi was to become head of the highest Muslim school in the Hagia Sophia Mosque. As head teacher of the madrasa, Ali Kouchdi published books by Ulugh Beg and other Samarkand scholars, advertising them widely. It was these scientific tracts which were later spread in Western Europe. In the 2 years this educated man spent in Turkey, he made numerous copies of Ulugh Beg's Zij and translated it into Turkish to train his followers.
Du travail de Ulugh Beg, ça a eu une influence très importante sur l'école d'astronomie en Turquie, à Istanbul, où ça s'est développé à partir de cela. Ça a eu une incidence par un autre chemin sur l'astronomie indienne.
His role in the creation of the astronomy school in Turkey is widely acknowledged. Thanks to this dedicated scholar, the Zij Sultani star catalogue arrived in Europe. In Samarkand, some Islamic leaders were opposed to Ulugh Beg's work, even though he himself was a devout Muslim. They bowed as they greeted their ruler, but their smiles were insincere.
Ulugh Beg had two sons, older Abdulatif and younger Abdulaziz. In one of the battles following the death of their grandfather Shah Rukh, Abdulatif showed outstanding courage, securing victory for his father Ulugh Beg. His younger brother, Abdulaziz, took all the credit for this victory, much to Abdulatif's outrage.
Mirza Ulugh Beg, sensing that the country would fall because of the son, altered his attitude towards him. This was all too apparent for Mirza Abdulatif, who did everything in his power to master the state. Both Ulugh Beg and Abdulatif were well versed in astronomy and studied their own horoscopes. Both horoscopes foretold that father and son could pose a threat to each other. By the will of the stars, father and son found themselves in extreme hatred. The father was troubled by his son's vile passions, while the son was overcome by arrogance. And so it was that, on the 17th of October 1449, father and son stand facing each other in the village of Damashq, both willing to kill the other.
Bu aştaha, bu hiç kim düşünmeydiğen bir iflas macruh. Eğer senle mengi şonep, mana şu darda yutmasak hamalarini oz kolum bilan olduraman.
Ulugh Beg tried to hide in Samarkand and then in Shurukya, but everywhere the city gates were closed to him. But this once powerful leader of great might found himself standing in the middle of an empty road with no one but a handful of troops behind him. There were no more than 20, 30 men. Abdulatif appealed to his father to go on a Hajj, to make a pilgrimage to Mecca. Haji Muhammad Ustrav was to accompany him. After they had traveled a short distance, a man of the Chagatai clan rode after them and announced that in the name of the Khan, they should wait in the next village while Mirza Ulugh Beg's baggage was being prepared. The rider also declared that Mirza Ulugh Beg's Hajj should be supported by all Denyong, Turks, and Tajiks. For Mirza Ulugh Beg, this was a most unfortunate decree, since he was forced to wait for some time in a nearby settlement. It was bitterly cold, and he requested a fire to be lit and meat to be prepared. The former leader, sad at heart, approaches the fire to warm his hands, Just then, a burning spark flies from the fire and lands on the hem of Mirza Ulugh Beg's white fur coat, singeing it. Having brushed away the burning spark, he lets out a grief-stricken cry. "Even you know my fate?" Terrible tragedy which befell Mirza Ulugh Beg on October 25, 1449, shocked many, including his true son, Ali Kuchi. He sought solace in the vastness of the cosmos. He stood up, gazing into the moonlit night sky, as though searching for something among the stars. He gave a deep sigh, and his lips began whispering words of the Quran. "In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful." With each word, his voice grew stronger, finally becoming a rumble. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The historian and eyewitness Abdul Razak Samarkandi writes Mirza Abdul Latif, by means of various trickery, or maybe by the will of the Most High, executed his father, a man of great renown, unaware he would earn the contempt of the whole world. The historian Mir Khan wrote, Mirza Abdul Latif was extremely arrogant, cruel, and antagonistic. He did not respect his elders, nor pity the young. All the princes and heads of state suffered from his words and trickery. 3 centuries before the events in question, famous poet Nizami wrote his epic dastan, Hoshtra and Shirin. Among other topics, the poem deals with the father-slayer Shirwi, and it is in this context that the poet predicted that the rule of a man who killed his own father would not last longer than 6 months. The council took the decision to remove him. For several days, the head of the father slayer was hung over the gates of the madrasa built by Mirza Ulugh Beg in Registan. Men, women, and children, they all came to throw stones at the father slayer's head. In the crowd was Ulugh Beg's loyal friend, Ali Kushti. "38 years in power, 38 years on the throne, and 30 of those years were dedicated to science. Ulugh Beg saw many things, toasts to victory and the bitter lessons of fate. This thinker, who uncovered the secret of far-off stars, suffered the betrayal and greed of his close ones. In Samarkand, Amir Timur built a futuristic construction. This is the site where his best efforts were realized, and where his grandson's work became a reality. He laid the path for his grandson to build the greatest observatory of the 15th century. It is very symbolic that the memorial of Amir Timur in Tashkent is pointing straight to the sky, to where, under the stars of ancient times, his grandson continued to work on his star book. Striving towards knowledge is the duty of every Muslim man and woman. Ulugh Beg.